Welcome to Marin Voices and Views. With Lawrence A. Strick, I'm Peter B. Collins. In our second segment today, we'll meet Erin Carlstrom, a candidate for the Assembly District that covers Marin and Sonoma counties. First, we're joined by two former elected officials from Sausalito, Leon Hunting and Ron Albert. Leon and Ron are on opposing sides of a controversy regarding the property at Butte near Lincoln in Sausalito. Ron Albert is an attorney who specializes in real estate law. He's a former mayor and council member at Sausalito. He helped draft the city's current zoning ordinance while serving as chairman of the Planning Commission. He's currently the president of Rotary Housing Corporation, a nonprofit dedicated to building affordable housing for seniors. And he's co-chair of the Marin Environmental Housing Collaborative. Ron, welcome.
Thank you.
Leon Hunting is also a former councilman and a vice mayor of Sausalito. He's a mortgage banker and past president of the California Association of Mortgage Brokers. He was Marin's representative to ABAG, the Association of Bay Area Government, serving on their executive board back in the 1980s. And he also served on the Golden Gate Bridge Board. Leon, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
And a note for our viewers. We had invited Linda Pfeiffer, who is the current member of the City Council in Sausalito, to join us for this discussion. She's been the point person on the issue and the creation of the task force that we're going to describe. Ms. Pfeiffer accepted our invitation and then withdrew in an email that stated, quote, "On reflection, I'm not sure this interview makes sense. The transparency and community outreach has been exhaustive on this topic. Mr. Albert knows that overwhelming resident sentiment is aligned with the city's task force. So I believe it's best just to let the current task force and city process carry out."
Okay, Peter, before we go forward, let's try to get to the facts of what's going on here. It's my understanding, and I know very little about this, is the city of Sausalito received a 50% interest in a 2-acre parcel of property on Butte near Lincoln. Last October, the city council voted 4-0 to donate the city's interest in the land to open space. Who owns the other 50%, and what are their intent to do with it, and how is it owned? Is it a joint tenancy? Is it a community?
For me,
for anybody, anyone who knows. I don't know.
Maybe I should answer part of
Well, I think we
it.
both could
Yeah,
answer.
yeah,
So.
sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, how is it owned?
It was actually gifted to the city by private parties
Okay.
who owned the property with the Hunts, I should say. And when they gifted it, then it became an undivided interest among the two parties, the Hunts and the city, each owning 50%, but an undivided interest.
So were the Hunts okay with the transfer to open space?
I think the Hunts are interested in having their half interest in the property purchased.
They want the city to buy it at some point? Or someone to buy it?
Exactly. But just to back up, my understanding is the city authorized the committee to go forward with the process, but didn't kind of left some fudge room there. They want the committee, task force, to come back to it, and they haven't made a final decision as to what to do with this property yet.
Okay, and the process that we're talking about, let's figure out what that is. The property right now, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is zoned for multifamily housing.
Correct.
And it was listed in the housing element as being a possible site for affordable housing. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that the rub here, that some folks are not interested in having an affordable housing designation there, others and others are?
Well, quite frankly, it's both. That it was part of the housing element issue, but that issue itself has a lot of sensitivity in our community. But the primary issue was that area wanted open space. That was very, very important because it's the highest density population in the community. and it's the one where roads converge. Almost all roads lead to Rome type of,
And
of round right there.
sensitivity is that there's some sensitivity, that is some opposition to designating it for affordable housing and building affordable housing. Is that really what we're talking about here?
Well, Ron could address that
Ron?
because he was at that time.
Well, for me, I think there's at least three issues here. An overarching one is the public process by which the property is now possibly heading to be converted to open space. The second is the donation of a public asset for that purpose with arguably an inadequate public process. But the third issue is the one I'm most passionate about, and that's the removal of a significant multi-family housing site from the zoning map, erasing it without replacing it. Now, I'm not hell-bent to see this particular site developed for affordable housing, but I am an affordable housing advocate, and there's nothing else like this in Sausalito.
Can I ask you, I want to define, if we could at all, we hear the notion of affordable housing all the time. What does affordable housing mean to folks in Sausalito? Can a firefighter or a teacher buy a unit? Is that what affordable housing means? Or is affordable housing a $750,000 unit? I mean, what are we talking? What is affordable housing in Sausalito? What does that mean?
It's really based on a metropolitan statistical area, which is a greater area, and what is determined to be the affordability, and then there's a multiple on that to put you into certain categories, whether it's low, moderate, or moderate income housing. I think we're getting away from the issue itself when we go in that direction. As someone pointed out on our task force and another speaker at our meeting last week, that area is filled with people who are low, moderate income. In the apartments, in the homes, they're working at 2 jobs. They're trying to survive. It's a very, very difficult economy for everyone, and they're not making a lot of money. So that whole area is, quite a lot of that area is low, moderate income.
And can you put a number on that? Is that 75,000 household income? What is affordable? Who qualifies for the designation affordable in Sausalito?
I don't have the latest figures on that, but it's somewhere in that figure.
Okay, Ron.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on.
Yeah.
Are you talking? It depends on what you're talking about specifically.
Mm-hmm.
An organization I'm a member of, Rotary Housing Corporation, owns 2 affordable housing projects. They're for seniors,
Mm-hmm.
and those numbers aren't on my cheat sheet here. But we're talking about people who are retired,
Mm-hmm.
who have very low income, who can afford who can afford to pay rent out of their retirement income. So we're talking about incomes well under 75,000.
Yeah.
I think it's down in the 40,000 annual range.
Okay.
So that's my particular passion. Is affordable senior housing, because there's a tremendous need for that in Sausalito and really throughout Marin County. We're a rapidly aging county.
So let me just frame it a little bit, one more question, and then we can move on a little bit. What I hear is that there's 2 acres that some people want to be left as open space, a park, a dog run, whatever is going to be, right?
Yes.
A park.
An overwhelming number of people in that area.
In that area, I understand that. On the other side of the issue, I hear that there's this ability to build some housing here. I don't really care if it's here. We could build 8 units on 2 acres or 10 units on 2 acres. I don't know what it is. Mm-hmm. And if we don't build it on these 2 acres, we should build it somewhere else in Sausalito. Mm-hmm. Is that essentially your point?
Yeah, that's sort of my point, is that I agree with the neighbors that this isn't an ideal site for affordable housing. It's not immediately adjacent to transit. It's a hilly site that would be more expensive to develop. But there are other sites in town that are flat and near transit where multi-housing is not allowed under the zoning. And what I want to have happen is a community conversation. It's too easy to get immediate neighbors to say, we don't want housing here, and get a crowd down at City Hall. I want to have a broader conversation where if they say the housing isn't appropriate here, they also participate in saying where it is appropriate.
Right.
And
Now-
I feel I
go
should
ahead,
clarify something on that. And I think, I don't want to assume that Ron's talking about bringing the issue of senior housing to the forefront of the community. That particular site has a creek running down the middle of it. It'd be very expensive to create any construction, and especially for low moderate income or senior housing. And we took the idea of senior housing into consideration when we created our proposal to the City Council. The idea of Butte Street has always, during this discussion, always been one of an effort to try to keep it in open space in perpetuity. And that's what we were doing. And I want to clarify something from the council standpoint. The council voted on this, as you pointed out, in October, 4-0 in favor of our proposal. So there is a condition precedent to creating the affecting this moving forward. And that is, what we have to do as a task force is sit down with the Hunts, talk with them, and if they concur with us in moving forward with the proposal, then we move forward and we identify a third party, like a land trust, that would purchase their portion. Now, we were given the property as a gift. We can do anything with it. And open space is very important to communities, especially in high density areas.
Okay,
So-
Leon, let me jump in because time is tight here and I want to turn to some of the process issues. So the City Council set up the task force that you serve on, and Ron Albert and former Mayor and Supervisor Annette Rose say the task force is made up solely of neighbors who oppose any development. Is that true?
No.
Are there people who are pro-development on the task force?
The people in the task force came, first thing I'm the chair. First thing I made clear right up front was we had been given a task by the council, and our task was to be absolutely objective. That's why we took the issue of perhaps having development on that site as an objective alternative. So it isn't a matter of anyone being biased. We left our bias behind. We wanted to see what was going to come out of this in an objective way.
Ron, do you agree?
I've met most of the members of the task force now, and I'm impressed by the people. They seem to be, people of goodwill, but they had an inherent bias. Their immediate neighbors who did oppose having the site developed. Now, maybe they said, walked into the room and said, I'll take a fresh look at it, but they entered the room with that inherent bias. We didn't have a broad cross-section of the community. There are no technical experts either. Ms. Pfeiffer said that they studied the topography, the soils, and Lord knows what else in a statement to the City Council, but there are no professional studies of any kind on the site that I'm aware of. So,
okay, and let me turn to you because Linda Pfeiffer has charged that your Rotary Housing Group wants to build on this property and that you once orchestrated an exclusive negotiating agreement for it that she says was, quote, anything but transparent. Your response?
well, first I want to make clear that I'm speaking here today not as a representative of Rotary. I am a member of Rotary, but we're talking about events 2 years ago. Rotary is no longer presently expressing any interest in this property. I'm speaking just as an advocate for housing. Orchestrated, I mean, I don't know how to respond to that. I reached out to every council member and requested a meeting to talk about what we were looking to do. Every one of them met with me except Ms. Pfeiffer. She is a volunteer in a civic organization that's trying to do a project that we believe to be of significant community benefit, you expect your elected official to at least give you the courtesy of listening to you before they make up their mind. She refused to meet with me.
Gentlemen, I wish we had more time. This is a fascinating discussion, and I appreciate your contributions to helping us get a better understanding of this controversy in Sausalito. Ron Albert, Leon Hunting, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
Joining us now is Erin Carlstrom, who's in her first term on the Santa Rosa City Council and is now Vice Mayor. She served on the Planning Commission and a Public Safety Oversight Commission, and is a business attorney with a law degree from Pepperdine University and a BA in Political Science from Yale. Welcome, Erin.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
It's great to meet you. Now, you and Diana Conti from the Marin Community College Board have each decided to challenge freshman Assembly Member Mark Levine. What's the case for replacing Levine?
I think this district has very clear values, and I don't believe they're being represented right now in Sacramento. I've heard from people all over the district that they want a strong leader that's going to stand up on behalf of our environment, stand up for our working families, fight for education, and that's the type of elected leader that I'm going to be.
And so do you see deficiencies in Levine's performance in his first year in office?
I do.
Can you give us a couple of examples?
I do. I think most recently, one of the biggest votes, or non-votes, I should say, was on the Coastal Commission Protection Act that would have allowed the Coastal Commission to impose penalties for violators of the act without having to resort to the court systems, which, as we were just discussing, are certainly already hurting and overcrowded. The incumbent chose not to make a vote on that, and the bill failed because of that vote.
Erin, you've been the past president of the Redwood Business Alliance, and I just heard you were probably thrilled to snag the endorsement from the California Nurses Association.
Yes.
So on one level, we got this sort of pro-business, or what they call pro-business association, and we have a labor organization on the other side, sorta.
Yes.
What's up with that? Are you pro-labor? Are you pro-business? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I am both. This is a continuation of the conversation I had for my council race. I am a business owner. My husband's a business owner. I'm a business attorney, so I work with businesses. But I come from very hardworking roots. My mother was a nurse when I was young. My dad, when I was born, was an auto mechanic. So I definitely was raised with a sense for the value of hard work, the value of labor. And I'm thrilled that the nurses chose so very early to stand alongside me. They know that access to health care is one of the chief things that got me into politics in the first place, and those are the types of values that I'm going to take to Sacramento.
So can you, it sounds to me like you're distinguishing between those businesses that, for lack of a better word, are ethical and are participatory in their community versus those that in many instances are very, very predatory. Is that going on in California at some level in your mind?
I think the easy answer is yes. The wonderful thing about where we live, though, and what I've experienced in Santa Rosa, Sonoma County, and Marin County, are the businesses that have located here have done so because of the quality of life. They appreciate the open space. They love our coastline. They love that we have clean water and clean air and great schools that they can attract their employees to come live here and support their work. So in my mind, there's not a distinction between business or environmental interests on that grand meta scheme.
Tell us your position on the SMART train. Do you support it, and will you fight for funding to complete it all the way to the Larkspur Ferry and on the north end to the original point of Cloverdale, which is now considered a maybe thing?
Yes. The short answer is yes and yes. I do support the SMART line. I think that we are looking for innovative ways to move people around in our counties and ways to help us meet the greenhouse gas reduction goals that we've all set and that have been mandated by the state. I think the voters believed that the train would run from Cloverdale to Larkspur, and absolutely I will fight to make sure that the funding comes in to help us complete that so that we can actually move folks around on a beautiful train rather than keeping them on the freeway.
Well, since you're building some trains, there's another one they want to build
Yes.
between Los Angeles and San Francisco, bullet train.
Yes.
I hear in your last answer that you're for that.
Correct.
How does something like that get paid for in these days?
That's a huge challenge, of course, and you know that the purchase of the line is currently being held up in several courts around the state, and I know that will be a great many years before that's decided upon. But I think that the train is coming, and I think once it's built, once we find our way out of the economic downturn that we are hearing is close at hand, I think we're going to need to start making those infrastructure investments that are going to put people to work building it and are going to continue to move people across the state.
Okay, I'm in favor of the bullet train. I don't see where the money comes from, even if we start a bullet train lottery. We currently have less than $10 billion pledged, that's state and federal money, against a questionable estimate, a projection of $67 billion to complete it. And that doesn't even get into issues of whether it will be affordable and compete with air travel and car travel once it's built.
Right.
So I have a lot of respect for Quentin Kopp, who was one of the originators of this concept, and he is now against it. So where is that money going to come from, Erin?
It's an excellent question, and I think all we can do is begin and try to find it. Obviously, there are other budgetary decisions that will play into it. I mean, we have to get more money back into our schools. We have to find our way out of this mess of a prison system that we've gotten ourselves into. We've got Covered California coming online. That's going to take some investment there. So there do need to be delicate budget decisions happening, and it's not going to be paid for all at once by any stretch of the imagination.
Now, let me ask you about your position on fracking. Hydraulic fracturing is this way to access the shale that is deep underground, and it produces natural gas in a very crude form of crude oil, the dirtiest oil available. Mark Levine supported the Pavley bill that the governor signed into law, which does establish what I consider to be minimal regulation of fracking. And now he is calling for a moratorium. Do you think those positions are consistent, and where do you stand?
That is one area that the incumbent and I agree upon. I do not support fracking. I think it's a technology that we have yet to experience the long-term consequences of that fundamental disruption of our seabed floor, especially in a state like California, where we do face the reality of earthquakes and tsunamis. It has to be something that we ban outright, and I do support a moratorium as well until those laws can be put into place.
You know, we're looking at a really bad drought.
Yes.
Marin gets 25% of its water, I think, from the Russian River. Your assembly seat covers Marin and Sonoma.
Yes.
Is there going to be a fight between Marin and Sonoma for water? What do we do about this?
A fight? No. I think, you know, Marin and Sonoma counties are communities of interest together. And yes, some of Marin's water comes from Sonoma County, but we are partners in this. And I think the wonderful thing about the people that live in Marin and Sonoma counties is we all approach water with such reverence. And we need to continue to improve on our conservation efforts, but our taxpayers, our ratepayers, do a great job of working with the water that we do have. But I hope that everyone is doing a rain dance, because we desperately, desperately need the river to be filled back up. I know Lake Mendocino is down to something like 39% capacity.
Oh, it's terrible, and people are not, unfortunately, really focusing on it yet, in my mind.
And do you support desalination of bay water?
That's an interesting question. I think that soon will come a day where we need to approach that. I think in the meantime, though, a lot of the restoration work that's going on, and that is currently being proposed, I believe, for the November ballot, will go some ways towards mitigating the depletion of our water resources. So I think probably once I've done a little more looking into it, I know it's an expensive technology. And I know that there are communities that have already implemented it. I'm not sure that we're there yet for the North Bay counties, though.
Now, a few minutes ago, you were critical of Mark Levine on the issue of the Coastal Commission. And I want to follow up on that on 2 points. One is, how would you have handled that? And the bigger question is that in many cases in Sacramento, bills die in committee, not because they are voted down, but because either a quorum is denied because somebody decides to take a walk, or people who are present simply don't vote.
Right.
So first of all, can I get a commitment from you that you won't take a walk, that you will vote on every bill that comes before a committee that you're sitting on?
Yes.
And then tell me how you would have handled what Mark Levine, in your view, bungled.
So to the first question, yes. I think when you are honored with the support of your voters and have the opportunity to serve in Sacramento, it's your job to represent those voters, to cast those votes. And if you disagree with the bill and you vote no, then you have that opportunity to explain to your electorate, to explain to your voters why you disagreed with the bill. And if you voted yes, same thing. Tell your voters why you voted yes. And remind me the second part of your question.
Well, how would you have handled the issue that you feel Levine handled poorly?
Well, when something comes before me on the Santa Rosa City Council that I don't agree with, it's a staff recommendation to approve or disapprove something, and I don't agree with it, you go to work and you speak to staff and you let them know, I don't agree with this language, or tell me what you were thinking here. And I let them know, this is where I'm coming from. I'm not sure I'm going to be with you on this. In fact, I'm not supporting it right now as it is. And then when it comes to us, and if it still has that recommendation, I lobby my fellow council members at the dais with my reasoning. And ultimately, if I don't have that 4-person count, I still vote the way I said I was going to vote, because that's what I was elected to do.
Erin, let's talk a little bit about politics.
Yeah.
This is a top 2 election.
Yes.
You got to come in second.
Yes.
And how do you see?
I got to come in first.
Well, you got to come in first. You got to come in 1, 2 first, then first.
That's right.
So where do you put together your coalition of voters to get to 2 and then to 1?
Well, we take a look first. I start in Santa Rosa only because that's where I'm from. Half of Santa Rosa is in the district. That's 50,000 voters who've already seen my name on a ballot. I have good name recognition, good name ID in Sonoma County. Then it's a question of making sure that I am connecting with the Marin County voters. And I've already begun my walking campaign. I was out in San Rafael just the other day, walking door to door, getting to know people. I've already begun reaching out, attending community events, making sure people know my face, they know that I'm available. And you know, I tell people, and it's true, in my council race, I personally walked over 100 miles of precincts. And that's the type of energy that I bring to campaigns, and that's the type of energy that I'm already bringing to this campaign. There's no question it's a challenge, but I think the Marin voters and Sonoma County voters deserve nothing less.
Erin Carlstrom, candidate for Assembly, a real pleasure to meet you. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming.